All right, hi, welcome to today's video. In this video, we're going to talk about Jamie Dimon's prediction from Chase Manhattan Bank. We're going to talk about rising interest rates, the debt ceiling just a little bit, and we're going to talk about can Las Vegas weather this downturn that is coming up in the economy, and what are some of the forces that would bring the market down here in Las Vegas, specifically interest rates, and what are some of the factors that might actually keep our market insulated somewhat from the downward headwinds that we're facing in the economy. So let's jump into the video. But first, I'm Ken Blumberg, your all-American realtor, and I'm bringing you news on a weekly basis. I think I'm probably going to accelerate that, but it would mean so much to me if you would go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment if you find some of it interesting. And let's jump into the video. All right, so the first article we're going to get into is from CNBC, and it's talking about comments from our favorite banker, Jamie Dimon. And Dimon warns souring commercial real estate loans could threaten some banks. And as we know, 4 banks have already collapsed, along with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, or should I say Sam Bankman-Fraud. And basically billions of dollars in that situation disappeared, but he will probably get off scot-free. But I digress. So let's jump into this article and see what Jamie Dimon has to say about what we can potentially expect in the economy moving forward. And there's Jamie Dimon himself. I can practically see the horns coming out of his forehead. But he goes on to say that commercial real estate is the area most likely to cause problems for lenders. And then he says the offside in this case is probably real estate. Now, he doesn't say commercial real estate, he says real estate. He says it'll be certain locations, certain office properties, certain construction loans, Dimon said. You're already seeing credit tighten up because the easiest way for banks to retain capital is not to make the next loan. So basically, as we know, money is moving out of bank accounts. Money is moving into gold. It's moving into crypto. It was moving rapidly into real estate. It is basically trying to get out of the banks for 2 reasons. One is because of the ultra low interest rates you are getting to save your money in the bank. People are moving their money to other funds like Fidelity, where you can get 5% interest, rather than leaving your money in the bank, where it seems to be more unsafe than ever. They're moving out of the banks to safer assets and to get better yields. So the article goes on to say deposit runs have led to the collapse of 3 U.S. banks. I think it's more than that. But another concern is building on the horizon. Commercial real estate is the area most likely to cause problems for lenders. U.S. banks have experienced historically low defaults over the last few years due to low interest rates and the flood of stimulus money unleashed during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the Federal Reserve has hiked rates to fight inflation, which has changed the landscape. Commercial buildings in some markets, including the tech-centric San Francisco, may take a hit as remote workers are reluctant to return to the office. And as we know, in San Francisco, it has turned into a complete zoo. There are so many people living on the street. There are so many homeless encampments. So if you were working from home and currently you were making the same amount of money, why would you want to go back to the office and risk your life every single day just to go to work? If you're trying to provide a living for your family, putting your life in jeopardy doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And of course, we're going to look at the effects that's having and why so many Californians are fleeing to the relative prosperity and safety of Las Vegas and Nevada. Dimon goes on to say there will be a credit cycle. In my view, it will be very normal with the exception of real estate, Dimon said. Of course, for him, it's very normal because he's watching the market cycles. And of course, it's very normal because he just bailed out one of these banks that we talked about that just collapsed. And they privatized the gains, the assets from the bank, gave it to JP Morgan Chase, and they socialized the losses, which is going to drive up inflation. As you print more money, then inflation goes up. He goes on to say, for example, if unemployment rises sharply, credit card losses might surge to 6 or 7%, Dimon said. but that is still lower than the 10% experienced during the 2008 crisis, he said. Separately, Dimon said banks, especially the smaller ones most affected by the industry's recent turmoil, need to plan for interest rates rises far higher than most expect. The thing is, though, it's hard to plan because we have had interest rates at such low rates for so long. Everybody is calculating and planning for that to continue. And now all of a sudden, with the massive inflation, there has been a huge turn. And Dimon sees that very clearly. I think everyone should be prepared for rates to go higher from here, up to 6 or 7%, Dimon said. The Fed concluded last month mismanagement of interest rate risks contributed to the failure of Silicon Valley Bank this year. The industry is already building capital for potential losses and regulation by reining in its lending activity, he said. And again, he says the easiest way for them to retain capital is not to make loans. So that means they're going to stay solvent at all costs. And that also means they want capital on hand so they can deploy it to buy up real estate if there is a crash. These people know the cycles. They are very, very astute. They have the best analysts, the most money, and they know what's happening. So if Jamie Dimon sees this, I would say it's important for us as the regular consumer to take heed. So next I want to bring you to a very interesting site on the internet. It's How Money Walks, and it shows us what is happening, how Californians are fleeing out of California to Nevada, which potentially could keep our market somewhat stable in the face of these rising interest rates, even though I'm not sure if it's going to be enough for other factors that we're going to get into in a minute. But as you can see on the chart, that we've gotten $5.14 billion from Los Angeles residents moving here, $2.3 billion from Orange County, California residents, $1.19 billion from Santa Clara, $1.12 billion from San Diego, California, and almost $1 billion from Chicago. So who knew that people who didn't feel safe would choose to leave and go somewhere else where they could provide a decent quality of life for their family and continue to live their lives, not being harassed and not being afraid of crime. As you know, in California, they have decriminalized the theft of under $1,000 from retail stores, and the results of that have been devastating. But thank you to Gavin Newsom for sending the people our way. We appreciate it. And I would definitely say, as a former California resident, I am much, much happier being here in Las Vegas. Of course, all things considering, if taxes were the same, if income was the same, of course, I would probably prefer to live in California. I love Nevada dearly. California's got oceans, hills, grass. I mean, it's an amazing state. But of course, nobody wants to live in financial distress their entire life. So thank you to Nevada and Las Vegas for being a refuge. So next, we're going to get into an article brought to us by Inman News. Homebuyers flinch as mortgage rates ascend towards 2023 highs. And I'm going to show you how massively interest rates affect buyer demand here in Las Vegas as we get into some charts in a few minutes. The article goes on to say, home buyer demand for mortgages dipped last week as inventory in many markets remains scarce and rates continue to climb towards 2023 highs last seen in March, according to a weekly survey by lenders by the Mortgage Bankers Association. The Mortgage Bankers Association weekly mortgage application survey showed application for purchase loans fell by seasonally adjusted 4% last week compared to the week before, and they are off 30% from a year ago. Requests for refinances were down 5% week over week and 44% from a year ago. So a lot of people are no longer going to refinance, which was another source for lenders to make money, another way for the real estate sector in general to make money. So this, coupled with massive layoffs from the tech sector and all across the economy that are being announced recently, is going to be another factor why people are going to have less buying power and there's going to be less money in the economy. The article goes on to say, according to a Zillow analysis, concluded that the U.S. debt default, while unlikely, could push mortgage rates above 8%, rising the monthly payments when taking out a new mortgage by 22%. So if you're going to buy the same priced home from your neighbor, which has already approximately doubled your payment from the interest rates that we were seeing, about 3% to about 6 to 7% this year. And then we're going to tack on another 22% on top of that. There is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, where people just say they are no longer going to buy, they're going to rent, especially with what I'm going to show you later in this video that is happening in Las Vegas and throughout the nation. Speaking at an economic summit Wednesday in Santa Barbara, California Fed Governor Christopher Waller said the question for the Fed policymakers at their June 14th meeting will be whether to hike, skip, or pause a campaign to raise interest rates that began at the beginning of the year. 6 of 7 alternative measures tracked by the Fed show inflation running between 4 and more than 5% over the past year, far above the Fed's long-term goal of 2%, Waller said. Now, of course, if you lived in Las Vegas, you know during 2020 to 2022, home prices were going up about $8,000 to $9,000 a month. So they're saying inflation is at 4 to 5%. If you are looking around and you have your eyes open to any regard, you know inflation, especially housing inflation, is substantially higher than that. And that is all due to the money printing and dropping the interest rates. 2 other Fed inflation hawks have also been outspoken in their view that the Fed may not be done raising interest rates, Blumberg reported. So guys, let's look at this chart of interest rates all the way back past the 60s. But as you can see, in the 80s, interest rates spiked to over 20% to tame inflation back then, which was a similar situation to now. But now it's actually worse. Inflation has been higher than what we saw in the 70s. And that was when the US dollar was decoupled from the gold standard and they went into hyper printing mode. Nothing like we saw during COVID, but that was the beginning of mass inflation. Again, interest rates were brought up to 20%. And as you can see from the chart, we've been on a downward slide ever since then. And of course, as a lot of you remember, after the attack of 9/11, which you can see right about here, I can't get it exactly on 9/11, but you can see that interest rates were dropped because there was a lot of fear in the economy. So things were slowing down. So of course, they had to stimulate the economy. They dropped interest rates to about 1%. Of course, at that time, they relaxed the lending standards, bringing in ninja loans, no assets, no paperwork, no qualifying, no job, no person, practically, and still they gave you a loan. Towards 2006, Ben Bernanke, the then Fed chairman president, said the market is reaching irrational exuberance. And obviously, by that time, home prices were falling off a cliff as they were trying to raise interest rates to slow the economy, but maybe they went a little bit too far. And then they had to bring rates all the way back down again to 0% to stimulate the economy. After years, finally, that did stimulate the economy, which brings us to about 2018 right here, where they were trying to slow down the economy again, but home prices began to dip. So what did they do? They started lowering interest rates again. And then, of course, during COVID, they printed trillions of dollars. So by some estimates, they printed about 25 to 40% of the money supply while dropping interest rates, and then sent the economy through the roof, sent inflation to 40-year highs, and basically put gasoline on the fire of the economy and sent it through the stratosphere. So again, there's this constant whipsawing between the economy getting way too hot and then the Fed coming in to try to tame inflation and slow down the economy. So essentially, they are the arsonists and the firemen all at the same time, which brings us to where we are today. But let me zoom in on Las Vegas and show you more on a more local level how interest rates are affecting homebuyers here in Las Vegas in our next chart. All right, so let me zoom in to the end of 2020, where interest rates hit about 7%. During that time, it was a ghost town. Now, of course, towards the holidays, seasonality takes effect, and the market usually slows down at that time. However, during COVID in 2020 and 2021, the market continued to skyrocket even during the holidays. So as we can see, we're hitting a shift because during that time, interest rates were about 3%. So when they spiked up to 7%, essentially it was a ghost town. Inventory started piling up. Buyers slammed on the brakes and they were holding off en masse. And then as you can see, coming into the new year, as interest rates fell, again, that's the proverbial straw right there. They said, okay, I guess they're low enough for me to come into the market. And then they started rising again. So they've been coming up or down, but right about now, we're going into a 7% interest rate range again. And as we previously discussed, interest rates could get to 8% according to the so-called experts. So what is that going to do to buyer demand, especially considering all the layoffs we just talked about? The other thing why inflation is running hot is we're having a lot of tensions with China. So we've decoupled our economy from China. So basically a lot of the cheap goods that we're buying are coming from them, but they want to get off the US dollar. They're making plans with Russia and other countries to not trade or buy oil in the US dollar. And to a certain extent, who can blame them? Because we were buying goods very cheap from China, but when we flooded the economy with money, we not only devalued your dollar, we devalued the dollars that we were paying them. So if we flood 50% of the money supply into the economy, the goods that we just bought from them, say if we gave them $1,000 and we put 50% of the money supply in the economy over 2 years, and again, it's a little lower than that, but just for simple math, then we took their $1,000 and tore it in half, and essentially they thought they were getting $1,000, but unbeknownst to them, they were only getting $500. So it makes sense that they would want to decouple from the dollar, but this is also why interest rates are potentially going to go up, because again, inflation is going to rage because other countries are going to charge us more for their goods and services, which means prices are going to continue to go up. And the only way for the Federal Reserve to bring that down is to raise interest rates and reduce the consumer's buying power. So while that is all going on, I'll bring you to another chart where we talk about home price to income ratio. Now this chart is for the US. So in the housing bubble of 2006, as you can see, consumers were paying about 7 times their annual income for a home. And that price has only gone up from there. So it went down for a little while. Of course, the economy felt like it was recovering, but now we're approximately 8 times the median income, where, as you can see on this chart, the average is approximately 4.25% of your average consumer's median income. And now, again, we were at about 8%. So already consumers are being stretched to the limit, and we can probably expect higher interest rates moving forward. So let me know in the comments, what do you think is going to happen in the housing market? And I appreciate your comment. Thank you for that. But let's move on. So if all that is not compelling enough, I'm going to bring you to a buy versus rent calculator. This is an aggregate of data brought to us by Zillow and the U.S. Census Bureau. And they're saying that even though home prices have come down a little bit this year, they're probably going to continue to go up. But the current purchase price for a home is approximately $2,500. The current rent price is approximately $1,800. That's about a $700 difference between buying a home or renting. But that alone, I think, is going to take a lot of would-be home purchasers and keep them in the rental market. But coupled with this next chart that shows the rental market is beginning to spike with vacancies. So as you can see on this chart, vacancies are almost going straight up. It's gone up 8% in the last approximately year. Vacancy rates here in Las Vegas have gone up to over 8% in just the last year, while rents are coming down, which is a very substantial factor why I think people will start pulling back on their prospects of buying a home and continue to rent. Now, if all that data is not enough to convince you, look at this other chart that talks about construction backlog apartments versus houses. During the pandemic, obviously home building spiked, but it has not spiked nearly to the level of the new apartment homes that we can expect to come to the market in 23 and 24. And you can see it all over town. When I drive down Charleston Boulevard, I can see massive amount of apartment buildings going up. Of course, there's new home tracts being built in Las Vegas like crazy, but on a national level, we have not seen this many new apartment buildings coming to market since the 70s. So again, rents are going down, vacancies are going up, interest rates are going up, making your home mortgage more expensive, while new rental properties are going to hit the market in mass in 23 and 24. So let's take a look at one more piece of data before we wrap up the video. And then again, you can tell me what your conclusion is in the comments. So here in this chart from Reventure Consulting, we have a chart of the Las Vegas house payments as percentage of median income. So we showed you nationally, but I'm going to show you Las Vegas. So currently homeowners in Las Vegas are paying 43.1% of their annual income to their housing expenses. You can see from 2010 to 2020, that number was drastically lower. It was only about 20%. So Las Vegans are definitely feeling the pain and the pinch of paying more of their annual salaries towards their housing expenses. And personally, I don't think it's going to be long before people say enough, I refuse to pay anymore, and they stop buying and they start selling these homes and possibly moving to other less expensive metros. But no matter what the case is, we are going to follow it very closely. So thanks for watching. My name is Ken Blumberg, your All-American Realtor, and I'm helping you live the American dream. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you on the next video.